Hi there, it's very nice to see you again. Today's talk is on embryology. I will be approaching this topic in such a way that as if I'm talking to myself as a resident. I really hope that this will be of some help to you as well. I recall this table in a required textbook for the radiology boards, and by that I mean I recall that I could not memorize it no matter how I try. After this short talk, we will be able to recall the following organs that these organs would come from different embryonic origins. Watch out for the complete series for this Painless Embryology series. So, how do the kidneys develop? Once upon a time, within the embryo, there were three kidney systems, and these three kidney systems are called the three little nephros. The eldest is named pronephros, the middle named mesonephros, and the youngest named metanephros. The eldest does not do much and just regresses. So we're going to focus here on the middle child here, the mesonephros, and the youngest one, which is metanephros. The youngest here is the most popular because it forms the adult kidney. But of course, for the metanephros to be successful, the mesonephros must also be there to support him. By this I mean that while the metanephros becomes the adult kidney, parts of the mesonephros will persist throughout adulthood. You will remember that this middle child here is the mesonephros because meso means middle. And meta here would mean beyond or the highest. Okay, so just think about meta-analysis in research as the highest form of evidence, and you will remember that the metanephros will be the last to form, but will become the adult kidneys. Let me now introduce a picture aid. Imagine that mesonephros here will hold a hot dog on a stick. For now, just remember that the mesonephros here looks like a hot dog on a stick. More on that later. Okay, so where do these three little nephros develop? The first one develops in a superior location, here, while the second in a more inferior location than that, and the third one, which becomes the permanent kidney, in the most inferiormost position. Because of this sequence of development, they are named pronephros, mesonephros, and metanephros. So later when we say mesonephros or mesonephric duct, we will visualize the structures to be here in the mid portion. When later we encounter the term metanephros or metanephric blastema, we will imagine that the structure will be here in the inferiormost portion of the embryo. So remember the hot dog we mentioned earlier. This hot dog will represent the mesonephros. The mesonephros has its tubules, and these tubules must bring the urine somewhere. Enter the mesonephric duct. The stick of the hot dog here will represent the mesonephric duct. Note that the mesonephric duct goes inferiorly and connects to the future urinary bladder. Now look at this portion here. At the inferior portion of the mesonephric duct is this bud-like structure. This bud-like structure will empty into the urinary bladder. So care to guess what this bud-like structure is, knowing that it empties into the urinary bladder? This is called the ureteric bud. This ureteric bud will go on and meet another structure. This structure in green is located here in the inferiormost portion of the embryo. So when you recall the sequence of the three little nephros, the one here in the inferiormost portion is called the metanephros. So this green structure is the metanephric blastema. Okay? Metanephric blastema here in the most inferior portion of the embryo. The ureteric bud will go and meet this one, the green structure, and now we know that this is the metanephric blastema. This metanephric blastema, along with the mesonephros, this one and this one, are derived from the same structure, the nephrogenic cord. Since the nephrogenic cord develops from the same structure as with the gonadal ridge, you will not be surprised to find that genitourinary anomalies commonly are seen together. Anyway, this ureteric bud will be attracted to this metanephric blastema, and this metanephric blastema will also be attracted to the ureteric bud. So in a sense, the ureteric bud and metanephric blastema are in love and bring out the best in each other. The formal term for this happening is called a reciprocal inductive effect. They will meet and will together form the adult kidney and the collecting system. So, the ureteric bud will form the renal pelvis first, and then the calyces and the collecting duct, while the metanephric blastema will form the glomerulus and the renal tubules. So when asked, do the kidneys and the collecting system derive from a single structure? The answer is no. The renal pelvis, calyces, and collecting duct come from the ureteric bud, while the glomerulus, renal tubules come from the metanephric blastema. This means that within the kidney, you can have a cancer coming from the renal tubule, say a clear cell renal carcinoma from the proximal tubule, but you may also have another type of cancer which comes from the lining of the collecting system, like the transitional cell carcinoma. So let us relate what we have learned. 1. A renal mass may have different histologies. What else? Remember that the love story between the ureteric bud and the metanephric blastema? What happens if there is an error? If the ureteric bud degenerates, the blastema regresses, creating renal agenesis. Now, if the ureteric bud and metanephric blastema do not join normally, the blastema will become a multicystic dysplastic kidney. Next, if the ureteric bud here grows an extra part, there will be duplication. Now, recall that the metanephric blastema is in a pelvic location, right? So, because of disproportionate growth of the urinary tract and the abdomen, the kidneys will have to have ascended to its normal adult location. So if the kidneys would fail to ascend, there will be pelvic kidneys. And that's the answer for here in number 6. Now, if the ureteric bud here is abnormally placed, vesicoureteral reflux can occur. Now, what if the kidneys are too close and therefore fuse, cannot ascend because they're stuck at the level of the IMA? You have a horseshoe kidney. So going back to our table here, Now we know that the kidney comes from the metanephric blastema, while the collecting ducts, calyces, renal pelvis, and ureter come from the ureteric bud or ureteral bud, which in turn comes from the mesonephric duct. So this ends part 1 of our talk. I hope to see you in part 2, where we will learn about the bladder and the vas deferens and the seminal vesicles.